Welcome back to the Tech Startup Network podcast. Joining me today is Jim Conti, the talent partner at Hyde Park Venture Partners, who has been with the firm since 2021. In his role, Jim provides strategic talent support and consulting to the firm's portfolio of companies. Jim, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Ashley. Really glad to be here today.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you here. For our listeners, Jim's full bio can be found in the show notes, but Jim, would love to start off this show today by having you share more about who you are and what you do.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Yeah, so as you mentioned, I get the privilege of serving as the talent partner with Hyde Park Venture Partners. We're a venture capital firm headquartered in Chicago. We are geographically focused funds. So we look to support founders and teams that are based in or have a connection to the US Midwest, Toronto, or Atlanta markets. I know that can sound like a little bit of a scatter plot on the map, but for us, it's markets and communities that we view as underserved by the large coastal funds. And so we try very hard to be good community partners, investing early in those markets with those teams. So, very early stage venture capital firm in that way as well. And then the last piece kind of know about us is that we're predominantly software investors. So, what would traditionally have been called SaaS, marketplace and tech-enabled service investing. But of course, today that means that we're investing in lots of AI products as well that still serve in very similar business models on the other side. We as a firm have been around for about 14 years. I've been on the team for about five of those. We're investing from our fourth fund at this point in time. And then I mentioned that I'm this talent partner title, which is an interesting little name that I get to carry around with myself that can mean all sorts of things to all sorts of different people. I would summarize it to say that I sit post-investment, supporting our founders and their teams to actually build the business that wraps around the product that they pitched us on. And so while my own expertise has a density around talent, HR, internal operations, and those are places where I can work directly in a kind of one-to-one consulting relationship with our founders. Like I said, I'm a one-stop shop. And so our founders throw any question that comes up as they're building my way. And my job is to find answers, solutions, connections to be able to continue to push their learning forward. So I have a mix of kind of like a consulting identity on one side and then kind of like a network or community management identity on the other, where I'm getting to know candidates, service providers, board directors, ecosystem partners, really anyone other than founders that are in the startup ecosystem to have those relationships curated for our founders to be able to tap into when the time is right.
Yeah, which is huge because it gets to the point where if you have a solo founder, it's like it gets to the point where it can't be just them anymore. Like, of course, there's a lot coming out now where there can be founders who don't necessarily have to be technical, but it does get to the point where they need to have those first few roles that they bring on. So having a resource like yourself to be able to support them through that process as they grow is really amazing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think to your point, I feel like every conversation is an AI conversation these days. So not to take us
Mhm.
there exactly, but to comment that the ability for our teams to be able to get themselves further with the tools and the platforms that are available today than even when I started the role 5 years ago is truly exceptional to see and to witness and experience. And actually, it's a part of my role that's kind of transformed as well. What was kind of a pure kind of like head count into recruitment correlation previously is a much more nuanced conversation around what within a business is a human hand. What does that founder or the founding team really prioritize in terms of what they want the team members that they're bringing on to do? What within the business is AI, agentic, automation, kind of whatever term or concept you're using to kind of fill in there. And then how do those two parts work together? Really kind of this synergy
Mhm.
between humans and technology within businesses today. So it's really fascinating because I will probably jump the next question that could come up here. I don't have an answer as to like what perfect looks like or the right answer because it's very specific to a context, very
Mhm.
specific to a belief system, very specific to maybe an individual founder and kind of how they view the world type of thing. And so a lot of my role is being a thought partner, being in conversation with our teams and helping them explore different opportunities, different directions that they can go, helping make the decision about kind of how to make those decisions. And it's a privileged place to be. I am very lucky to be in the conversations that I am with our teams, and to see our founders really thinking innovatively about what the businesses of tomorrow are going to look like.
Absolutely. And that makes a lot of sense where it like really depends on the founder or the company on what that like perfect fit might look like. But at this point, I'm curious, do you see that companies like must have like technology plus human? Like, do you think it kind of has to be like a technological, like whether someone's using like an agent or something like that? Do you think that that has to be a part of the conversation, or again, it kind of depends on their company and their specific goals?
It can depend a little bit. I will agree to that. But at the same time, I would say that if you are arguably a founder building at the forefront of technology today and you're not leveraging some of these tools to help either kind of, extend your runway, be able to make yourself kind of like 10x yourself in terms of what you're able to get done in a day, you're
Hmm.
probably missing a really, really important part. And particularly on the behalf of my investing team here, they would probably have some like tough questions to kind of push on in that. So again, it's not that it's required, but when we're looking for signals of success, it's typically one where someone's really embracing this technology and thinking about how far it can take them is an important part of the conversation with them for sure.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm curious to hear from your own career journey how you landed in VC.
On accident is probably the simplest answer to give. So prior to joining up with Hyde Park, I was a two-time over first head of people for software companies in Chicago. So I come from the ecosystem of building teams within the markets that Hyde Park supports. I'd not had the privilege of having Hyde Park on one of my cap tables previously, but knew of them in the ecosystem. With that in mind, when the talent partner role popped up and kind of got circulated around the HR community here in Chicago, the two parts that really resonated with me when I saw it was one, the thesis, the focus on a geographic element, and me feeling a very strong passion about Chicago being a fantastic place. Chicago and the Midwest. I should expand it and make sure that I'm doing that here. But my teams were mostly in Chicago. Chicago and the Midwest are fantastic places to build companies. There is a lot of fantastic talent, diverse economics, strong economic development engines. If we want to get into climate change, it's one of the spaces in the country that looks like it's probably going to be able to weather climate change a bit better than others. All these different factors, right? So I had this kind of like passion, a little bit of like, come on, Chicago, we're a little bit underdog. We can do this.
Mhm.
So that paired with my own intellectual curiosity. I had the good luck and good privilege to be at two teams that were both scaling quickly, that I learned lots of great lessons, did lots of hiring, had lots of really fun memories from those times. But for me personally, I kind of looked at it and said, how much of what I have done is truly best practice, something that I can scale into other organizations that works across different moments in time, different company structures and industries, et cetera. And how much of it was just dumb luck, right moment, right people, right time, right product. And so when the job description kind of got circulated around, it was kind of those two pieces there, the kind of like continuing champion for Chicago and the Midwest and satiating some of that intellectual curiosity for me that was really exciting and kind of got me to say, I want to explore this a little bit further.
Mhm.
And so from there, kind of entered into an interview process. I joke with many of my peers in venture that I am an oddball, that I actually like submitted an application and like interviewed for a job. For better or worse, venture is a very relationship driven industry, and a lot of the hiring happens via relationships, not necessarily via like formal processes.
Mhm.
But went through a full process. Kind of the funny note there, I started my process in March of 2020, which, if all of us remember that auspicious date and time, it was the start of the pandemic. And so had a first interview talking to the person that's now my boss, but one of our managing partners and founders here.
Mhm.
And the end of the conversation, he said, Jim, this has been great. Where's your head at right now? And I was like, listen, I just sent my company home to work from home for 2 weeks for this COVID thing. Feels like a weird moment to think about a career transition. He was like, I agree with you. I wanted to keep the call with you, but we were a little uncertain as to like where we're going to go. So like, let's just kind of put it on pause. And so the role was on pause for almost a year. And it was interesting because as you ask about kind of like getting into the field and such, it gave me this kind of extended period to like try it out.
Mhm.
The person that became my boss, he and I had kind of a number of check-ins every couple of months, just kind of the pulse on like what he's seeing in the world, what I'm seeing in the world. And I kind of served as this talent partner. I got on their newsletter, I saw the roles that they were hiring for, and I had people in my networks that were being impacted by layoffs at the time. So started referring candidates in, started giving resources for needs that I saw popping up within the portfolio. So it was this very interesting thing where it was not an interview process, but kind of got to do a job simulation as I was doing another job at the same time, which really kind of gave me a little bit of the insight into the role that I wanted, that I wasn't sure exactly what this job was going to be. And this gave me just a little bit of insight there. So, like I said, about a year later, kind of the start of 2021, they restarted the process, went through the full interview, and then joined the team after that. But yeah, kind of an interesting, accidental kind of like path into it, but with this kind of like interesting period of time for job simulation during the early COVID days and stuff like that. It was really, really fun.
Oh my gosh, I love that story. And I also have to say, what you mentioned about even though the hiring was paused for a year, the fact that you still stayed in touch with your now boss and just because you wanted to, because you wanted to be helpful, sent candidates their way. I think that's a really important lesson for people listening in tech right now who may be in that similar spot where if they want to find a way to differentiate themselves or provide value without necessarily looking for anything in return, I think that's a great example of doing so. So I love that you shared that.
Oh, Ashley, I mean, nail on the head here. I talk to so many folks out in the market who are thinking about a job switch or impacted by layoff or something like that, right? And the big scary word comes up of networking and like, how do I do
Hmm.
networking? People are very intimidated by it. And I was as well. Before I came into this job, I would say that it was something that was not I'm fairly extroverted, so like the ability to talk to people was there, but like kind of the like, well, what do I do with this? Was very much kind
Right.
of like a place that I got stuck. And so exactly what you're articulating here, I find that when I'm talking about networking, I find that I come to the point of saying it's about trying to get to know someone's story. So just come in with a
Hmm.
couple of core questions that you kind of open the door with, and then look for one thing to give back to that person on the other side of the conversation. It can be an article that you found. It can be simply supporting a post of theirs on LinkedIn or something like that. It doesn't have to be big. But what you need to do is start looking for these like small little ways to start to contribute into that relationship, start to add into that relationship bank account as it's often described, right? And I think that like when you start thinking about it that way, where you can embrace your own curiosity and kind of intellectual learning on one side and then using that to kind of fuel the networking side, right? Is great. And then the last point is that I always come to is that if someone's not interested, they're just not going to respond. And then you go on to the next person. And that's fine.
Yeah.
Not everyone's going to be your champion. That's okay.
Yeah. Oh, great tips there. And I think what you also mentioned too, or alluded to, that I would like to talk about, because you mentioned part of your role really is community. And I feel like at this point, like you can't be in tech without having a community. Like I feel like it's really hard to do things solo. And so would love to hear from your experience since you have played a big role in community within your firm, how you've seen that play out.
Very much, very much, very much. At most hiring that I'm seeing happen right now, and we'll say for like kind of folks that are like mid-career-ish into like leadership roles, it's heavily driven by network and relationships. It's people that know your story, that know the impact of the work that you can do, that are helping to open doors, right? Again, not to draw us into the AI conversation, but to touch on it quickly, I'm really frustrated with what I'm seeing AI do to recruiting. It is really making it, candidates are leveraging AI to be able to like soup up their resumes and apply to more jobs. I totally get that. Then recruiters are using AI to then sift through that information. And what I'm hearing from both sides as I have conversations is that both sides are like, how do I find the human in the midst
Mhm.
of all this? And so this desire to have kind of some signal, right? And that's where the relationships and networking come through. Some signal to say this is a real person who's worth a conversation versus someone that just managed to blast out 300 resumes in an hour kind of thing. You know what I mean? There's some
Yep.
intention behind it. There's some purpose behind it. And so, yeah, it's a great question right now because I think that we're in a reckoning moment in many different kind of corners, but for me in kind of recruiting specifically, I'm definitely feeling the reckoning moment in terms of like what candidates are looking for, in terms of what the process looks like, what the company is going to look like when they get there, et cetera, and what recruiters are trying to suss out through the interview process, right? Making sure the
Mhm.
candidate's a real person, they're not fraudulent, they're not, using overly using AI to get through the process, but utilizing AI as a tool in the process, and all these kind of like parts and pieces there.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned your frustration because I think that's important too, where it's like I'd hate to see society rely too much on AI when there's still so many opportunities where the human is needed, as you mentioned at the very start of this episode. And so I like what you kind of shared there is almost like having that right balance of knowing when to use it and when to really focus on bringing that human side through.
Very much so, very much so. And I'll kind of get back to the point that I mentioned earlier, but as I work with our founders across the portfolio, there's a bunch of different belief systems within. I have some of our teams that are very much trying to AIify as much as they possibly can. They are
Mhm.
leveraging tools and technologies to be able to fill as much space within their business as possible with those technologies. I have other teams that think that or have a belief system around every kind of like frontline touch point that a customer touches, hits, is a human, right? So your support team, your success team, your sales team, that those teams are supported by AI and enabled by AI in the background, but that founder or that founding team wants that touch point to be human for their
Hmm.
customers. So there's a very strong belief system there. I have some of our more technical co-founders, founders and co-founders, that have a very strong belief system around the importance of the mind of a technologist in the engineering team. And so really looking for ways to be able to celebrate and elevate the technologists on the team via using technology in the background type of thing too. So again, there's just all these different belief systems. And like I said, I'm not going to say that I think there's one that's like right or wrong at the moment. I think it's very much contextual.
Yeah.
But I'm seeing different models that work. And it's interesting because the playbook isn't written for this one yet. And so it really is like okay, let's go try that and see if it works. And if it doesn't, we'll modify and try something else. Very
Hmm.
much that moment.
Yeah, which is really cool to think about. And one thing I want to go into, Jim, because you mentioned this earlier, is that how much of a hub the Midwest is for tech. And I want to shine a light on it. I know you kind of mentioned like a few things happening that makes it such a big area, but I feel like New York and San Francisco, they tend to get the spotlight. And so I always love shining like the underdogs, really. And so from your perspective, would love to hear why the Midwest is such a great area for tech and what makes it so unique.
Yeah. I touched on a couple of these pieces earlier, but I want to reiterate and then I'll go a little deeper as well.
Hmm.
Um, when I look at Chicago, I look at the Midwest, and then I look at the other markets that we serve as well, Toronto and Atlanta. What you really see there is a couple of things. One, you see economic diversity. The economics of the region are supported by different industries that have different relationships with each other. And so for me, I see that as a strength, right? Versus, out in the Bay Area that is so heavy on tech, software, and now AI that when there's a hit to that market, the whole ecosystem kind of goes down a bit, right? For
Hmm.
us, if there's an up or a down in a given industry at a given moment in time, it doesn't kind of like handicap the entire market. It might be like a little bit of a hurdle to get over, but we're able to kind of like work together. So I think that the economic diversity is one. Second, there is an acknowledgement of the underdog identity that we hold. And so there are a lot of non-governmental and city and state groups who are helping to spur innovation, whether it is through funding or space or building community, a bunch of different things that are happening that I think are really unique to where we are because everyone's trying to kind of band together as that underdog mentality and say, like, we are building something great here. Like, come take a look at us.
Hmm.
So that's kind of number two. The last one I want to kind of go into is that while going back to kind of the economic diversity piece, while there are great companies that have been built here, I think what you also see is companies that are built that reflect the industries that are here, that are very pivotal to the economy nationwide and globally, right? So you think about Chicago. Chicago is a logistics and supply chain hub for the country and for the world. And so not just is it that there are literal train cars like rolling through the Midwest transporting things, but that there is necessary technology to support that. So some of the biggest companies in our portfolio reflect that, reflect the industries that are local here that need that technological advancement that the coast kind of miss because they don't see it in the same way. And so you
Hmm.
really do see that innovation happening in what can be described as boring industries, but industries that make the economy and the world move. And so that for me is another piece. I kind of flippantly mentioned about climate change a little bit earlier, but it is something I do need to highlight. You're seeing data center creation in the Midwest, especially as a primary place where these facilities are being built. We can get into the debate about kind of like environmentalism and kind of like what we need to do to make that successful for both the company and the community, right? So we can get there, but a lot of that's being built here. Chicago has a giant quantum campus that is being built on the south side. That's going to be kind of one of the kind of key quantum spaces that's going to exist in this country as well. So, with that in mind, you have the ability to build technology and tech centers here that have staying power that are literally not going to be at threat of hillside going into the ocean or something like that, which is almost a little bit wild to have to talk about in a context like this.
Yeah.
But when you think about durability and you think about building something that is sustainable, that is going to have, decades of impact on a market, you need to have that too. So I would also just flag that as well as what I'm seeing here.
Oh, and I'm curious too, since your firm also focuses on Toronto and Atlanta, if you saw those same opportunities in those two cities, or if it was like maybe the software piece that kind of tied all the locations together.
Yeah, very much that, very much that. It's
Hmm.
kind of funny, folks often are like, this is like a little, like I said, it's like a scatter plot on the map. Like, how did this
Yeah.
happen? It's exactly what you probably imagine, which is that we had founders that we invested in within the Midwest who, for personal reasons, moved to the Toronto and Atlanta markets. And when they
Mhm.
got there, they got connected locally and started sharing more back about what they were seeing, and our investing team got excited. And so, what we really kind of did was look at like what did we believe to be true about Chicago and like why we launched this firm in the first place, and is that true elsewhere? And so we really were able to validate that for both the Toronto market and the Atlanta market. Now, is it true for other markets as well? Probably. I want to say that that's definitely on the table. Why have we not expanded further? One of the other parts of kind of our thesis and how we believe we do our jobs best is that we want to be very kind of boots on the ground, close partners to the communities that we're working with. And so that
Mhm.
means a bunch of different things. In my world, it means that I have this kind of like openness to be able to be supportive of folks that are in job search or, that they're just kind of exploring what's out there and I can be a friend and a resource to them with that being a value add to the firm as well, right? So that we have everybody in these markets knowing who we are, the type of work that we do, how we can be helpful. Um, if we were to expand our markets, that would be a new market we have to build that whole set of relationships in. And so we're trying to kind of figure out like, does that make sense? Does it not make sense? Or does it make sense just kind of like continue to reinvest in like where we already have that presence? And that's where we've decided to sit for right now.
Mhm.
I say all that to say that there are other markets that definitely kind of reflect this as well, that are emerging markets from a tech perspective that I think are definitely being overlooked. And I'm hopeful that there are other entities like a Hyde Park Venture Partners that's supporting locally therein as well,
Yeah.
kind of think about kind of, yeah, those other spaces.
Absolutely. And for any job seekers who are listening to this episode who are looking for a new role in tech, what's some advice that you would have as someone who's an expert in talent? What's advice you would have for job seekers for being able to stand out, perhaps land a role that they're really excited about? Anything that you have to share?
Yeah, yeah. I feel like the news headlines get taken with the like really extreme, AI is going to come for your job, and if you're not ready for it, you're first on the list. And like, while there are certainly some corporate leaders out in the world that do hold that belief, I won't say that there's not. There are some folks out there. The vast majority of the conversations I have with leaders, with candidates on the market, et cetera, is really around the combination. It's about the
Mhm.
enablement of humans and about like we might not hire as many people as we needed, 5 or 10 years ago because of the technologies, but we're still hiring folks and looking for folks that can harness these technologies. So I think number one is like get out of the like news cycle, get out of the headlines, focus on yourself, kind of come back to kind of a centered point here. One, two, the candidates that I see moving most successfully across the market right now are doing two things. One is going back to that relationships thing. They're getting back out there. They're making sure that their relationships, past coworkers, friends from college, etc., know their story, kind of know what to kind of have the antenna up on their behalf for, because speed is so important right now. So that if someone has a conversation somewhere and they can send you something real quick and you can move quickly in that process, that's one of your biggest strengths right now. So lay the
Mhm.
groundwork with that relationship piece first is a big piece, relationships and networking. The second kind of piece of advice I'd say is like you have to be experimenting with these tools. Figure out what your peers are using. So if you're, on the go-to-market side, talk to marketing leaders, talk to sales leaders. What tools are they using? What are they experimenting with? Almost all of them have some sort of a free version that you can go play with. And so like go play, go figure it out. What do you do with that? It depends a little bit kind of like who you are in the world and like what you believe. But like I've seen folks, for example, that have come from the go-to-market side using something like a Clay to be able to
Mhm.
actually manage their job search process, like manage their like networking outreach. And I'm like, cool. So you're using it for your own personal use, but for the purpose that it's used in a corporate environment, right? So you can speak really intelligently in that way. I'm seeing people use these technologies to support a nonprofit that they're really passionate about, or their kids, spinning up a website for their kids Girl Scout selling, Girl Scout cookie selling or something like that. You know what I mean? Like I think there's a lot of different places where you can play with these tools that's not just like you're sitting in front of your computer being like, what do I type next? What do you
Mhm.
care about in the world? Like what are you passionate about? And then do that goodwill to help support as well. So like that's another direction that I see folks going that also I think the job search can feel very lonely and it does take time right now. It's gonna probably take a few months to find that next opportunity. And so you have to fill that time, not just with refreshing the job boards, but spending time on things that are joyful to you as well, that make you feel like you're learning, that help to push your skill set. And so like go experiment, go try, like just give it a shot because I promise you, you will be asked about it in the interview process. So you have to start
Yes.
having some good answers there.
Oh, great advice there. And I love what you mentioned too about finding out about the tools, but using it for your own purpose, like finding something that you're excited about or passionate about and using a tool to support that. What good advice. And then it like in a sense, builds a portfolio for you in the process.
100%, 100%. It's really funny because as I talk to some of our teams, I everyone's still trying to figure this out, but like one of the places where folks are starting to go look to talent is actually an early career. So if there's some early
Mhm.
career folks listening, like let me just say that there is definitely hope. It has been a tough few years. I totally agree. But what you're seeing is that the teams are kind of like, we don't quite know how to play with these tools. We don't quite, we're not totally native to them. And so they're looking for early career folks who are just more native to technology platforms, who've had technology in their hands since they were little, that they can kind of come in and help coach the rest of the team or not have the same nervousness or limitations that someone that's maybe a little further in their career hold. And so it's
Mhm.
kind of this balance that's being searched for of like the restraint of a more experienced team member with the freedom of an earlier career team member, and that like kind of the marriage of the two finds that balance that they're looking for. So I really do think that there's an opportunity out there to like really kind of lean into these tools, experiment, and again for early career folks, that there are opportunities that are starting to pop up that look different than anything I've seen in my career thus far. Like hey, figure out these new roles and go fill them?
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that up because that's one thing that I've seen in actually in a few Slack communities I'm in is some people saying like, what's happened to the early career level roles? Like a lot of people are noticing that there aren't really much. So I'm glad that you mentioned that there are a lot of opportunities that you're seeing coming through because it kind of is tricky. It's like chicken and an egg scenario. It's like how
Mhm.
can an early level person get experience if there isn't even an opportunity for them to get experience?
Exactly, exactly. I feel bad because I feel like we have definitely evolved out of the period of time where there's kind of this very like scripted, like go do this thing and that leads to this result.
Yeah.
That structure doesn't exist in quite the same way today as it once did, and so I do
Mhm.
think it's about kind of like reimagining and thinking creatively for what you want to work on and what you want your career look like and what you want to specialize in, and letting that be hopefully a process and journey of exploration more so than it
Yeah.
is like here's your 10 steps to make it to the C-suite kind of thing. That doesn't exist in quite the same way as it did pre AI, 10 years ago, something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then a more so, like, I guess, personal advice question for anyone who's job seeking. Sometimes, for people who can't get a role, it might feel a little bit demoralizing or disappointing when they just get constant rejections or go through 5 rounds of interviews and then are told that the company has gone with someone else. With that happens, do you have any advice for just someone to keep going and keep feeling like inspired and excited when it can feel like they just kind of keep getting knocked down by the process?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Before I give any answer here, I want to acknowledge that like every individual has their own kind of financial system and structure that they have to be responsible to. And so
Mhm.
like I don't want anything I say to say like ignore that. You have to be responsive to that. So I'm just going to call that out. I think where I go kind of in your question though is that in those moments, you're going to do best by feeling your feelings. So if you are
Mhm.
feeling, dejected, if you're feeling frustrated, if you're feeling upset, feel that emotion. I think trying to bottle that up is probably one of the more unhealthy things that you can do. And so find a way to release that though, whether it's in conversation with a friend, going for a run, screaming into a pillow. Like, I'm not going to tell you what the right answer is here, but whatever it is for you, go do that. Kind of get that emotion out of your body. Don't let it sit there. But I think the other thing, and from a strategy perspective, so kind of taking a step back from the rejection moment, the folks that I've seen navigate the job search process in the kind of healthiest mental capacity are folks that look at it as a job in and of itself. And if you think about just about any of our jobs, very few people, especially working in technology and kind of corporate world, do the same exact thing different things that they're doing in a given day, right? They have some
Mhm.
strategy time, they have some execution time, they have some collaboration time, whatever, whatever. I think that you really have to think about your day in a similar structure, that you're giving yourself the freedom and latitude to have different parts and pieces. And so, when I'm talking to folks, I'm like, it looks different for different people. And so kind of choose your path here. I do think you should spend some time on a daily basis on the job boards. You both for finding opportunities to chase after and apply to, but also seeing how companies are starting to talk about the roles that you're targeting and making sure that you're positioning yourself correctly. So even if you're not applying to something, just reading the job descriptions and honestly, grab the job descriptions, throw them into one of the LLMs and start having the LLM tell you what they're seeing. Great use case for AI, but do
Yeah.
go out there, make sure you're seeing that. Definitely apply to stuff. Dedicate time on a daily basis to do your networking, kind of relationship building, whether that's outreach on a given day or whether it's the actual conversations, whatever it might be. And then I think the final part, or the final two parts, sorry. second to last, learning. Make sure you invest in learning for yourself, whether that is chasing certifications, experimenting with tools like we're talking about, any of those kind of things, I think is time well spent. And you can use it to then, you can use Claude to create a notification system for jobs or something like that, right? Like maybe that's how you're ingesting your jobs on a daily basis. So I think some sort of learning element is really important. And then the final part is fun and joy. You have to create time for joy in your day. Because if you are just sitting in front of your computer, going through the job search process, it you are not going to get to an interview and be in the right headspace if you have not given
Mhm.
yourself the freedom to feel joy. And so find ways to feel joy. It can look different ways. I have two dogs. For me, joy is going for a long walk with my dogs and like finding a grassy spot and we like sit and hang out for a little bit. And that just
Yeah.
resets for me the whole, kind of like mental space that I'm in and stuff like that. Whatever it is for you, make sure you have time for that too.
Yeah, I love that. It's that perfect balance of having that structure and having that routine that you're going through, but also making sure to focus on filling up your own cup because it would get to the point where you probably are feeling burnt out by the process. And as you mentioned, Jim, it's like you can't show up in the right headspace if you're not giving yourself the love and attention and energy that you need.
Yep, totally. One last kind of piece of advice that often comes up in this vein here is that um, I make sure to kind of remind candidates no place is perfect. Like
Mhm.
don't be confused by what you see on Glassdoor or what you hear from someone. Like every place has its bumps and its bruises. No place is perfect. And so through the process, you're not looking for perfection. You're looking for a place who, as I describe it, whose baggage matches your own, right?
Mhm.
The challenges that are going to be there, the opportunities that are going to be there, match for like what you are looking for as well. And I think when you really approach it that way, there's a much healthier kind of like mindset coming in of looking for a place where what you're able to deliver, provide, do there is going to be of benefit to both you and the company. And so I think
Mhm.
that's just one other part that I think of here is like trying to get away from like perfection and looking for opportunity for promise of impact that can be had.
Yes, absolutely. I know this question totally aligns with a great theme throughout this whole episode, which is relationships and community and having people in your life. But my question for you now is I would love to give you a shout out to someone in tech who's doing something cool right now that you're really admiring. So it could be a founder, could be someone in VC, could be a community builder, anyone's fair game, but would love to hear who you're really feeling inspired by these days.
Oh, I love it. I'm so fortunate to have many inspiring folks kind of in my circles, but there's two folks actually, if I could, that I would love to
Yeah,
highlight.
go for it.
Um, one person is a woman named Heather Doche. She was a talent partner at Signal Fire, so another venture capital firm, and she has since gone out to be able to kind of launch her own practice, where she is the practice is called Waypoint Works. But kind of the thesis that she operates under is this concept of a high slope employee. So think of someone that like kind of comes in very much kind of the early career folks that I was talking about earlier in our conversation. Someone that kind of comes in with potential and really just accelerates through the business. And so it's this marriage between someone, the individual coming in and kind of accelerating themselves, saying yes to opportunity, but also the business opening doors for folks to really kind of show that. And so she highlights different folks, kind of represent that profile. She kind of coaches companies on how to think about development programs accordingly. And I just absolutely love to see what she's building and kind of embarked on. So that's person number one. Person number two, a woman named Erin Thomas here in Chicago, who just exited an HR leadership role with Upwork. And so she is embarking on a new journey as well called Shoulder to Shoulder. And she specifically is a trained psychologist. And so she comes into teams and really focuses on the psychology around gathering. Like, what does it look like for folks to show up together? How do you bring down the barrier so people can authentically have conversations about what's happening within the business, how they're building relationships, etc. It's work that she did heavily within Upwork and previous organizations as well, and she's offering it as a kind of a solo consulting business now.
Mhm.
But the moment that we're in, where you have teams that are still remote and hybrid, where the time together is so limited, making sure that that time is as effective as possible is something that comes up in a bunch of my conversations. So, for anyone out there that's thinking about kind of facilitation stuff and thinking about offsites and stuff like that, can't recommend Aaron more for helping to kind of create the conditions necessary for that time to be as successful as possible.
Yeah, great shout outs. Love it. Jim, this
Beautiful.
has been such a fun episode, and I've so enjoyed having you on the show to share everything that you've been doing at Hyde Park. And I'd love to have you share with our listeners where they can find you online in case they'd like to connect.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. It's been lovely to be here, Ashley. I'm super easy to find on LinkedIn, probably the best way to connect with me. So feel free to drop a connect. And if you're ever in Chicago, I make the joke that I'm the most caffeinated HR person you've ever met because I'm either talking HR, grabbing a coffee with someone, sometimes both at the same time. Always up for that too.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jim. It was so great chatting with you.
Likewise, Ashley. Thanks and have a great day.